I'm Joshua and I'm an INTP. Previously I made a video on a critique of the multiple intelligence theory posed by Howard Gardner. And I was cut off in that video due to a limitation of space on my device, and so I am posting the second part of this video in this current video. Now, I apologize that it's so much after the fact, but due to technological difficulties, it took some time, and me getting lost in all of the responsibilities I have in my work and school kind of kept me from getting that done, but I'm going to go ahead and push that out tonight. And so as a recapitulation of what I said in my previous video, primarily when you accept the view of multiple people having multiple intelligences, you say two things that you may not realize you're saying. You're saying, well, primarily what's been stated before is that multiple intelligence means that there is no singular intelligence, and that this meaning that there is no singular intelligence says then that multiple intelligence are domain specific, meaning that they only exist in artificial fields that people create. If they only exist in artificial fields that people create, then they are not biological in nature, and they are not proto-linguistic in nature. One may say that multiple intelligence are biological in nature, and that's fine. There are some problems with that, but still that can pass. But then you cannot get to the point that intelligence then is not proto-linguistic, and it means that it's wholly a human phenomena. It's not something that exists outside of humanity and their ability for domain-specific fields, or being able to create domains of knowledge and interest. And so I think the problem, what I was saying in the final minutes of my last video, I really believe that the problem is that we've deeply contextualized the question of intelligence within an individual, saying that an individual's performance within a classroom or an individual's performance within an academic setting is or just with a skill, somebody being able to actually do something, as in being able to play music or being able to draw something profound or create some sort of masterwork or some insight within a domain of knowledge, that is intelligence. And that may be, and so I want to say this, that may be a display of intelligence, but that is not intelligence. At least I don't think it to be intelligence. Yes, there's problems with IQ, and you cannot say that IQ completely captures somebody's intellectual abilities because of the problems of standardized testing and just basically the human condition. But one cannot say that intelligence comes down to solely with what one does. There is a relationship between practical action, skill acquisition, and skill application, in so far as intelligence weighs into that picture. I'm not saying that it doesn't, but to say that it's solely that, or to contextualize it so heavily into education and academia, ignores millions of years of cognitive evolution. And if we're looking at different strata of life forms, we can recognize intelligence within them and their actions and their decisions and how they differentiate and use information in an environment. I think that we see that as we go up this strata of complexity within an organism, whether we're talking about an amoeba going to something being such as a tapeworm, or going up the strata to something being a rodent, or going to an octopus, or to a primate, or to finally us, we're saying that there's something that's a consistent theme insofar as that they have cognitive abilities, and there is a cognitive nature that exists in anything that is an organism that has a material existence. They do things in the environment, and they make decisions about the world and how they're going to get through the world. I think insects have an intelligence. This is why I don't agree. This is the main reason why I don't agree with Howard Gardner's theory, is because I don't think that he just thought about it in a logical terms. I think that it was something more like a lay experience for him and something that was aggregated over time with educational theory and being in educational environments and seeing the pre-Greek theory, the Greek theories and the Roman theories of thoughts and genius and intelligence, and then morphing that with other previous Enlightenment theories of knowledge and acquisition and intelligence, and then sort of bringing those all together. But there's just a logical inconsistency in so far as how it matches up with empirical experience. Squirrels, they have a sense of intelligence, and it's not displayed through mathematics, it's not displayed through music, it's not displayed through art, it's not displayed through kinesthetics or existential or whatever you want to call it. It's some general phenomenon that gives them an ability to step into an environment, pick out meaningful pieces of information, differentiate it, and make decisions about it. And those decisions lead to their survival or their demise. You see it in octopuses. It's something like problem-solving ability. I don't know if it's just simply problem-solving ability, but I say it's something like problem-solving ability, insofar to say that that's the best damn estimation I can come up with, because I'll tell you right off the bat, I don't know what intelligence is. I don't even want to make a protest in saying that he's completely wrong, but I'm saying that there is a severe flaw in his theoretical framework, insofar that it doesn't match just what evolution shows. It does not match what we know about cognitive science, and then what we do know from cognitive science, because the things about the specific domains of intelligences that, or intelligentsia, that Howard Gardner mentions is that they all, if you're going to be a high performer in mathematics, if you're going to be a high performer in music, if you're going to do any action that would cause or elicit another response from another human being, say, that individual is highly intelligent, comes down to practice fundamentally. And expertise, it has a high correlation with somebody's individual abilities and their performance capabilities. And that's not something that's not known. And it's something that's been known, I think, at least since the 80s. But I'm not really quite sure when Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences came out. But I don't see, and I said this previously, but given that it contradicts what we can see in other organisms. In other organisms, we can absolutely observe that there is some general cognitive phenomenon that's going on that allows that organism within the environment to make good decisions, and that's a qualitative word, but I think a good decision, if we're thinking in terms of a Darwinian perspective, is any decision that leads better to survival or fitness, and that's not necessarily social Darwinism, but just the idea that you have an information-rich network around you, and this information-rich network has things in it which will tell you whether or not you will live, and they have things in them that will tell you whether or not you will die. And you, as the organism, have to pay attention to this network. You have to respect it in a certain way and fear it, but much more as fear of the Lord, as people, as Christians say in the Bible, having a reverence and a deference for nature in its totality. If you don't pay attention to it, it will kill you. For example, if you saw a squirrel in your backyard, say there's a coyote in your backyard, and say that there's a squirrel, the squirrel knows the coyote's there. If you witness that squirrel not take off, but instead walk up to the coyote and sniff its nose, and it got eaten, you would think that was a stupid squirrel. It's to say, people's cognitive abilities aren't as simple as just referential actions within an environment to keep them from dying. Obviously, we're much more complicated than that. But that is, to me, a very powerful and strong rebuttal for any argument that says that there's no such thing as a general intelligence. There's such thing as a general intelligence. We can observe it on multiple levels. To say that people don't have it, you would have to create some sort of philosophical, metaphysical argument for why that wouldn't be the case, because it's not something you would observe. It's not something that can be empirically substantiated. And what can be empirically substantiated even more so about somebody's ability to do something is that they have a general level of intelligence, and then they have an enormous amount of deliberate practice and expertise, which allows them to perform in that manner. So if you're saying that multiple intelligences say that there is one no general intelligence, I would tell you you're wrong. And if you're saying that multiple intelligence means something more than just mere expertise, I'll tell you you're severely misguided. And I understand why they exist. I understand why they exist insofar as in the field of education and academia, we get it wrong and sometimes about how we approach a student and their ability to develop and their ability to really excel in a program or at a skill or within a specific domain. We're in a westernized culture. We're a little too microwaved in our thought process and expecting things to be immediate and expecting children, most or all children, to be prodigies and amazing at something from the moment they started. But those, just because there are wrong expectations and that those expectations have played out in pernicious manners over time, and how kids were able to sit there and appropriate themselves in an environment and believe that they had some sort of cognitive efficacy so that they could achieve their goals or that they can match these academic metrics, is one thing, but that's a problem all of its own. That is not a problem that says whether or not intelligence isn't a singular factor, or there's no general intelligence, or that excuse me, or that multiple intelligences is a thing, because where do they come from? How do you get them? Are we saying you're born with them? And if you're born with them, I hope somebody sees the issue with that, because if you're born with a certain level of mathematical intelligence or logical intelligence, it means you should be able to do syllogisms from the time that you're 3 or you're 4 years old. It means that you should be able, well, maybe not syllogisms. I mean, I know students, when I was younger, I could do fairly complicated mathematics when I was about 5 and 6 years old. But I can tell you from my own experience, as somebody who many people consider intelligent and precocious, that I spend a lot of time doing the things that I do. I'm sorry, and I don't mean to bring my own experience into it. I should retract that statement and say that at least the literature, especially the literature on expertise and performance, shows that it does not matter necessarily somebody's level of IQ. What matters primarily, at least when you're looking at a skill being displayed, what matters primarily is the type of practice they have done, which K. Honors Erickson defines as deliberate practice, the amount of feedback and how rich the feedback is, and how long that loop between deliberate practice and feedback has gone to sit there and transform the individual into a high-performing, high-caliber type of individual. To be redundant in a way, sorry. But it's just to say that Howard Gardner's theory, I understand its reason for existing, but I don't think the reasons for which it exists match the claims that it makes, or even does anything about them, because I think you just get in a whole other set of problems when you're trying to look at, well, what is intelligence really? What does it mean? To me, intelligence is an ideograph. It's much like the word freedom, something that has a tremendous amount of meaning, but it's very difficult to come to any objective definition on what it truly is. But I can tell you, just because we can't clearly define something doesn't mean it doesn't exist, and it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist in a very significant way, and it doesn't mean that its existence isn't singular in a manner. And the reason I say, at least the reason I have to sit there and reason and think that intelligence, if it is anything, is some singular phenomenon, is that it exists extant beyond language. it was for us to be here where we are right now, we had to make some very significant choices that differed from every other species on the planet. We would not be calling man the rational animal if that didn't have some sort of truth or validity to it. We thought our way to where we are. And animals, in a lot of ways, even if they're relying on some sort of instinctual pattern or instinctual schemata to make decisions from, they're making decisions in the environment. Intelligence has something to do with our decision-making capabilities. And I'm telling you, I'm not telling you. I'm saying if you look at the psychological literature, if you look at what evolutionary theory would show us, if you listen to these arguments, there would be at least, just in my thought, in my mind, because I don't know what the truth is. I think I know the best approximation of what we've come to understand so far about these things, and not really with cognitive science or neuroscience or intelligence. I mean, I do quite a bit of reading, but I'm not a cognitive scientist. I'm not a neuroscientist. I am a thinker. So you take that for what it's worth. And saying insofar from what I've studied, which is extensive, it still does not make me a PhD on the matter at all. But from what I've studied, which is extensive, and what I'm able to reason between what I've studied specifically on neuroscience, cognitive science, psychology, and evolution, that his theory does not, it has too many problems with it. And hopefully I have listed and made known what those problems would be. And so I will give a summary to the argument now. And it goes as following, that Howard Gardner, he proposes that there is no such thing as one singular intelligence. He proposes that there are multiple intelligences, and these multiple intelligences, whether he says it or not, are domain specific. If intelligences are domain specific, and there is no general overall intelligence, then that means that there is no proto-linguistic intelligence, meaning that there was no type of intelligence or cognitive capacity that people or any organism had prior to any field of knowledge or domain of knowledge being developed. And I think when you say it like that, you see how asinine it sounds. It just doesn't work. And then if that doesn't do it for you, if the multiple intelligences, which they are domain specific, then you're telling me that our only metric for being able to determine an individual's level of intelligence is through their performance and their abilities, their ability to display their abilities. Even though that might sound redundant, but their abilities to display their skills, their ability to do the action. That would be the only solid metric, other than, and I guess the reason that matters is because intelligence makes predictions, and so we want to have some sort of psychometric tool, at least to where we can approximate what we should think about and doing with an individual, and how increasing their program in education, determining where they're going to go, determining what sort of road they should take in life and whatnot. Intelligence says something about that. What it exactly says, I don't know, but that's why we would want the battery. And so you're telling me that because we have this need for a battery and a metric, you're telling me that the only way to fulfill that, given all the things I've said before, would be to measure skill and ability. Then there's a problem with that, because skill and ability is something that's acquired over time through a deliberate process. And even when you're looking at physiological differences in the brain, when you look at somebody who's highly gifted or profound at something, a specific thing, whether it's savant, whether it's a child, whether it's an adult, they have a cognitive network that has been molded over time by doing the action in a certain manner over and over and over and over again. And the neurophrenology matches their patterns of practice. Their neurophrenology may not be a complete result of their practice, but their practice has a significant amount to say about their neurophrenology. So for those reasons, I reject multiple intelligence theory. If you have any comments, feel free to share them. I'm sorry it took me so long to get this out, and I'm sorry if my manner of speech seemed overly passionate, but that's because I actually just debated this a few minutes ago, so anyways, no excuses. I apologize for the display. Thank you for watching.